Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of Dallas Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com, brought to you by the very loyal people at Window Nation. Star Telegram columnist Matt Kingle. He's Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr., Dallas Cowboys beat writer since 1936, who has chronicled 78 consecutive years of Cowboys playoff failure. Clarence, pardon me, I have a bug and wants to be a part of the show. Have you recovered from, in my mind, the biggest playoff disaster in the history of the Dallas Cowboys? That includes Wade Phillips' first year when they had home field advantage throughout the playoffs and they lost in the divisional round against the New York Giants.
Yeah, it's the biggest playoff disaster, no doubt, and certainly the Jerry Jones tenure, and even before that. It's not just that they lost; it's how they lost. Yes. It was a no-show performance. It was, just pulling the rug out from under you. The old, Peanuts character when Lucy, did football again. They had Cowboy fans hooked again, and again, it's to lose one thing, that would have been hugely disappointing. But to go out there and just get the doors blown off you, not show up, get out coached, out schemed, out played, out efforted. There's no bigger playoff disaster than what we saw Sunday at AT&T Stadium. The whiteout became a blackout.
Oh, that's magic. Cowboys lose to the Packers in the wild card round 48-32. Green Bay came into the game as a 7.5-point underdog. I thought that line was way too heavy.
Yeah, I did too.
You and I both picked the Packers to cover. Neither of us thought the Cowboys would lose outright. Now, it never even crossed my mind because unlike Philadelphia, which lost last night in the wild card game at Tampa Bay, they got blown out. Philadelphia had been collapsing progressively over the last month and a half. The Cowboys had been really good pretty much all season. They hadn't lost at home all season long.
Since the 49ers game, you have the Bills game there, but since the 49ers game, they've been one of the better teams in the NFL.
So those were blip, and they hadn't lost back-to-back games.
No.
But I just didn't see any sign of this coming. Of all the playoff games that were played this weekend, the home team won every one of them, and pretty much all of them were blowouts. The only one that was kind of close was Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and that game really wasn't that close. That was a fake close game. But Dallas and Green Bay was not a close game. Green Bay raced out ahead. The offense was terrible. The defense was god-awful. Everything about it. But you mentioned a word there that I wasn't expecting, Clarence. To me, that's an effort issue. There was something about that team that changed after Green Bay took the opening kickoff and just walked down the field for a touchdown. Well, something changed.
No, and let's just get into it because Jerry Jones has to do something. I mean, and what is he going to do? And when you look at Mike McCarthy, and certainly that's a big question coming into this thing. Cowboys are the only home team to lose a playoff game this time. Okay, the only home team to lose a wild card game. It happened 2 years ago. The only home team to lose a wild card game in 2021.
I didn't even know that.
Both games, both times, the Cowboys weren't prepared to start. The Cowboys weren't ready to go at the start. I remember in 2021 when Mike McCarthy came out after the game and told us the team was not ready, and he sensed it in the locker room. And I'm just like looking at him incredulously. How did you let them walk out there? I would have shaken the rafters. I would have shaken the locker room. I'd have said, wake the hell up. Okay, it's the playoffs. I'm not letting you walk out there with you in this type of mindset. And that was the same time that we saw the 49ers coming out there with the beatbox and, all cool and laid back and ready to go. And he said he sensed that his team was not ready. And that was 2 years ago. And now you have a home game again, and your team goes out there and it's flat from the start. CeeDee Lamb's body language. It was they were.
He was defeated. He was defeated.
That is from the head coach.
I tell you, and I even thought about that game against San Francisco because that one didn't. Remember after the game, they were like that team, and I'll say this: at least they learned from their mistakes. That team blamed the officials.
Right. But they came back and they showed some fire.
They did. They came back and they made
how
it
they
game.
started. There's no excuse to not be ready to start.
At least in that game, it was competitive.
Right.
San Francisco was a good team. You could say, well, okay, we lost to a pretty good team. We should have won. We were at home, but at least that was a competitive NFL game. We barely lost. And okay, Clarence, this wasn't competitive. This was preseason. Like the fourth quarter of that game, that looked like the fourth quarter of a preseason game. Fans were leaving. Fans were checked out, looking on their phones, worrying about the weather. Green Bay sitting there screwing around because they know the game's in hand. And then we'll get into this here in a second, but you mentioned it. What are they going to do with Mike McCarthy? Mike McCarthy is entering the final year of his contract, although there are reports out that he has an additional year. I'm not sure which is true, but either way, the owner, GM, has a decision to make about his coach, who is 67-42 in his 4 years with the Cowboys, led them to historic heights in the regular season that we haven't seen around here in 25, 28 years, 3 straight 12-5 seasons, but they're 1-3 in the playoffs. And, if you go back to every playoff game, the San Francisco game you mentioned, they came out half asleep, they're blaming the refs, and they barely lose. Then they open the 2023 playoffs or 22 playoffs in Tampa, Tom Brady's last game. Dak's throwing it all over the place to kick the Buccaneers' butt. Then they go to San Francisco, and they barely lose a pretty competitive game, right? It was a competitive game, but they lost.
It was a one-score game.
It was a one-score loss. Right, it's a one-score game. And then this one is inexcusable because your team didn't even compete.
No.
And I know Dak was great in terms of saying everything. We'll get to him in a minute. First things first, they got a head coach. Every head coach and their brother is available right now. They all have one thing in common. They all want to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and they all think that they can convince Jerry Jones that their way is the best way and he will fall in line. All of them think that they can do it. And they might be right. First things first, before they address the head coach that they're going to hire, what are they going to do with the one that they have now?
Well, I mean, the thing about it, they have to do something because the bottom line is this. You cannot sell this product to the fans next year. I mean, this fan base, I thought last year was a disillusion that I ever seen after the 49ers game. There were people
so?
Why do you? Huh?
That's interesting. Why do you think they were disillusioned after that 49ers loss?
Because what they saw, they didn't see that coming, and they thought that was the year. They thought they had a chance to break through, especially the way they played in Green Bay, and then he made the changes, and Dak is having an MVP season, and this year they have everything set up. You have the Eagles collapsed. You get home game, maybe 2 home games. The best chance to get to the NFC Championship game, really, again, since 2007, but certainly the best chance to get to the NFC Championship game. This was supposed to be the year. Jimmy Johnson's in the Ring of Honor. The curse is over. Okay, this is the year for the Cowboys. They have a 9-8 team, a young 9-8 team coming here for the wild card game, and to go out there and get the doors blown off you. The fan base is just. They're outdone. I mean, there are people. There's no way you can sell the same product, the same hope. There's just nothing to believe about this team going into next year if you go status quo.
Then how do you fire him? Okay, then how do you fire a guy? And Philadelphia is talking about it now. The Eagles got to
because their team quit. Philly quit.
They quit. They quit.
I know they went to the Super Bowl last year, but they quit.
They totally quit. And that locker room, the stories about that locker room coming out here the next couple of weeks are going to be hysterically funny. This team, the Cowboys have not quit on a coach since Wade Phillips.
They didn't quit. They just they were out-coached.
They were out everything.
Out-coached, out everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, who was the head coach in waiting, well, that's not happening. He's interviewing for every job on the planet other than a sales rep for Pfizer. Okay, that's how many job interviews he has lined up.
We'll see if he gets one. We'll see if he gets one for sure.
Oh my God, I just can't see him not getting one of those jobs. At the same time, I'm like, I don't know how you sell your fan base. Yeah, we just hired the coach who oversaw a defense that got its rear end kicked at home to Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers and a bunch of 12-year-olds. But that's not their problem. Cowboys' problem. Cowboys' problem is, how do you fire a coach who just did all these historic things, whose team didn't quit on you? How do you fire that guy? But at the same time, how do you bring him back?
because you brought him for playoff success. You didn't bring him to get you to the playoffs. You brought him here to take you to the next level. And for whatever reason, this team does not rise to the occasion under this coach.
Do you think
that's why you brought him? You brought him to be better than Jason Garrett. You brought him for winning the Super Bowl. You brought him to take it to the next level. If he can't take it to the next level, and again, I hear you because I like Mike. I really like Mike. I think Mike has done a great job with the media. But again, from a Jerry Jones standpoint, how do you sell this and Mike to the fan base? Because they're gonna the regular seasons don't matter anymore to the Cowboys fans. And I know Jerry does not want to start over. He doesn't want to tear it down. And we'll get into that when we talk about Dak in a few minutes. But how do you sell the status quo going forward to the fan base?
So the one recurring criticism that you've heard longer than I have, and I've heard it for a long time, is the constant in this equation is the general manager. The general manager happens to be the owner, Jerry Jones. I'm under the impression that the GM really is probably more Will McClay, but Cowboys are privately owned and they run things how they're going to run it. Jerry's not going to give up that title. And ultimately, he is the final say. And he likes to say that. He likes to say, oh, I'm just a steward of the franchise. I just have the keys, but I'm also the final say. I'm like, oh, dude, you can't have it both ways. Clarence, is Jerry the problem?
You know, we've been talking about this for a long time about Jerry being the problem. And Jerry is the GM and Jerry won't change. And I just don't know. Globally, Jerry's the problem. I think that too many times the main thing is not the main thing. It's always about marketing. He got this Netflix show. He's a lot of things out there on the periphery that shouldn't be about. It's not about winning. Okay. So that's my issue with Jerry. There's too much stuff out there that ain't about winning. It's about marketing and all this other stuff. Okay?
Revenue. It's about revenue.
That's the problem. But as far as the football team is concerned, Jerry's given Mike everything he wanted. He's giving most coaches everything they want.
Right.
Jerry's not standing in the way from football success. Nothing Jerry does. It's a bad look sometimes, to be worried about. Like I think this Jimmy Johnson thing was all about the Netflix documentary. I think that's part of the motivation. I mean, you got all
totally agree.
Jimmy going to the locker room and doing all these different things that don't need to be about the team, but as far as the football team, preparing the team and all the other stuff, he's not gotten in the way of that. Those he does not necessarily pick the players and say, Mike, you have to pick this guy, Mike, you have to play this guy, or something like that. Now they do make decisions financially, and that's a collective thing with Steven and Will and all those other guys. But I can't say Jerry's the reason why they haven't gotten to the Super Bowl since 1995. I would say Jerry's the only constant. So, so what came first, the chicken and egg? I don't know, but he's the only constant.
Nope, and you hit the nail on the head. Globally, from 35,000 feet, Jerry's the problem. When you get down on the floor and you see it, he's a contributing factor, but to insinuate that he's the only problem, no. When I looked at this team in the last however many years, let's say 10, I can think of maybe 5 instances where I thought Jerry said, no, we're doing this. And he overruled everybody in the building. When they signed Greg Hardy, nobody wanted to sign Greg Hardy. He wanted to sign Greg Hardy. Randy Gregory, I don't think anybody wanted to draft Randy Gregory. He wanted to draft Randy Gregory. Maybe Jalen Smith, maybe, because despite his wealth, he loves a deal more than anybody else. And certainly this Trey Lance thing was Jerry written all over it, which, he did it because he thought he'd get a deal and pull one over on people. Other than that, Clarence, I can't see many instances where I thought that is just Jerry doing what Jerry wants to do. And really those moves, the Greg Hardy one was a disaster. The other ones, they really weren't that bad.
No, I mean, and again, the big one when they overruled Jerry on Johnny Manziel. So there's some checks and balances there. But again, this at the end of the day, his biggest mistake was who he hired as head coach. Again, you look at all these other teams, and let's look at what Green Bay has done, look at what Cleveland's done. They get these young guys, okay? They're not going to get a guy, I want a guy who's done it before, who's won before, but they're getting these young guys with some creative ideas, just like you see and as we talk about what they're going to do going forward, and you got the Detroit coach, you got the Houston coach, young guys with creative ideas who are doing different things, not going with a cycle coach, maybe like a Bill Belichick, who's older, who's won it before, but recycled again. But you look at some of these young franchises, Cincinnati, in the Rams, in Green Bay, they're winning and moving forward and taking steps up with young, up and coming coaches with new ideas who do different things, creative ideas, and so maybe that's part of it because he's the one who went with an old guy with an old archaic system. Even though it worked in the regular season, it did not work in the playoffs.
Well, Cowboys have gone with a young head coach once in Jerry's tenure. His name was Jason Garrett.
Yeah, but
okay,
but
hang on.
That was in the.
I know.
That was not a guy who was a creative. That was a guy because we know him. You know, that wasn't a guy who was like a hot guy because he has all these great creative ideas and
he was well liked and well respected. Yeah. Well respected.
Well liked and respected because of his tenure, not because he had learned at the feet of somebody like Kyle Shanahan or whatever else who had new creative things, who were doing things differently. Jason brought back the old systems they ran under North Turner. You know, I'm just talking about somebody that's outside the box, that's creative, that's doing. Yes, he was young and they liked him more because of his dad and more because he was a backup quarterback and he went to Princeton and he fit this certain profile, not because he was some creative genius.
No, and he was happy to be part of the Nick Saban coaching tree. Okay, we are going to talk about the guy who wears number 4 here in a minute, but first, a word from our friends at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no interest payments for 60 months, 5 full years. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Thanks, Window Nation. Appreciate your loyalty to sponsor this show about the Dallas Cowboys, America's most disappointing team. I'm Mac Engel, the 4 Star Telegram, joined by Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr. Clarence, we have gotten into the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and I want to ask you, for the record, if you had to bet, will Mike McCarthy be the head coach of this team this time 1 month from now?
I would say no, and I would say we sooner than a month, but again, you never know. I know, which I wrote on Sunday, that Jerry's privately assured Mike McCarthy that he's good.
They changed his mind.
But, that was before that debacle, and that was a debacle. Okay, that was a debacle. And
that was a debacle.
You can't excuse the debacle and overlook the debacle, and that has a tendency to change.
It should, because, Clarence, there were like 7 or 8 different things that could have happened out of that game, right? And everybody would have been fine. Some minor alterations. We need to address this. Linebackers a problem, whatever else. But they picked the one doomsday nuclear bomb scenario to hit, and they did it. And as a result, everything is on the table because that's how bad that was. Will that include the Dallas Cowboys doing anything with the starting quarterback that they've had? Dak Prescott had a great year. He did. Goes 12-5. Again, he's going to be an NFL regular season MVP finalist. Again, deservedly so. 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 8 billion yards passing. Looks great. Goes into the playoffs and lays an Easter bunny-size egg against the Packers and is terrible. To his credit, Dak Prescott owned it after the game, said, I sucked. And if you're going to fire Mike McCarthy, then you got to throw me into that one too, because my success this season is as a direct result of my relationship with that guy, which is great. They're married to this guy. They got a $50 million cap hit coming up with him. They've talked about restructuring his deal. Jerry says that's a given. We're going to do it. In my mind, this guy's the quarterback of the Cowboys for at least the next 2 seasons, minimum. Clarence, he's great. Love the guy. There's 2 different things that we're talking about here. The guy, the leader, is exemplary, upstanding. You want your kids to wear number 4. The player has been terrific in the regular season, won a hell of a lot of games. Postseason, he's been really, really substandard. And if you got to go with him, you got to go look inside the numbers. I've talked about this before. If you go back and look at every one of his playoff games, other than one. He's been bad. Go back to the rookie year against Green Bay. Green Bay comes in here, they're an underdog, and they jump on the Cowboys from the start. Dak's really bad. He gets hot in the second half. They tie the game, and Green Bay wins on a phenomenal throw by Dr. Aaron Rodgers and then a long field goal. 2 seasons later in the playoffs against Seattle, he's pretty good, and they win. They go to L.A. against the Rams. They have a great opening drive. They score on a touchdown to Amari Cooper. They look good. The Rams start running. Cowboys can't stop them. The offense can't move the ball until late because the Rams have pretty much just given up everything underneath. And the Cowboys make a blowout look closer than it needs to be. Dak was bad. So now let's go into the playoffs. 3 years ago against San Francisco at home in the wild card game you mentioned here at the top. Cowboys come out flat. Prescott's terrible. They don't get going until it's too late. They barely can move the ball against basically a 4-man rush. He looks bad. They lose. Last year in the playoffs in the wild card game against Tampa Bay and Tom Brady's last game, Dak lights it up. He looks awesome. Throws for 8 billion yards. We're rolling hot. Then he goes to San Francisco and Santa Clara. He doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, like he's ever played the position. He's terrible. He owns it. He says, man, I got to wait another year to prove everybody I know what I'm doing. He gets that chance on Sunday against Green Bay. He's absolutely god-awful. Throws 2 pick sixes in the first half. CeeDee Lamb, pardon me? What's that?
1 pick six.
I thought he threw 2.
No, it was 1. He was down. They scored on that drive, but it was 1.
Okay. So those 2 pick sixes.
It was 1.
Okay. Anyways. And he's
terrible. On Aaron Jones' touchdown runs. It was 1. But he was bad.
But he was terrible. So yeah. We talk about what are you going to do with Mike McCarthy? We're going to do with Dak Prescott.
Well, yeah, and I'm not even going to argue with you because I would say he was pretty good in that Seattle game, and he was pretty good. He was pretty good in the Green Bay game. He wasn't awful. They had a poor game plan. They ran the ball, and he came back and went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers beat him because they couldn't defend a 3rd and 31. But that's semantics. The bottom line is, what can you do? And really the answer is nothing because of the money and because you hurt yourself when you refused to sign him early on his rookie deal. And you let him get the leverage. You signed this 4-year deal after all these contracts, and we talked about at the time. He signed a 4-year ironclad deal for $160 million. You could have signed it for $20 million if you'd done it in 19 or whatever else. You waited. You let the Rams sign their quarterback. You let sign win.
Everybody. Minnesota gave Kirk Cousins money. Everybody.
You put him on the franchise tag, and so you did it to yourself. Okay, you did it to yourself. And so now you're in a situation where he signed a 4-year, $160 million deal. Now he's going to the last year of his deal with a $59 million cap hit. Okay, you have to do something with the cap hit to sign other players, to do something to put your team together. If you say we're going to cut him, it's $61 million. Okay, and you still can't move forward and improve this team because this was a playoff team. You want to find someone who's going to take you to the next level, coach. Don't want to start over. If you say I'm going to let him go into the last year of his deal and then and don't do anything, it's $59 million. You can't do anything. He has a no trade clause. You can't trade him. Okay, you can't sign CD. You can't sign Micah Parsons. You can't do any of those things. And so you're really, Dak still has all the leverage in the negotiations. And so what do you do? And the question is, do you tie yourself up to more money with Dak Prescott because you almost have to extend him to really manage the team going forward, not knowing if he can get you to the top?
What I mean,
that's the question. Now, he has not played his best football when it matters most. I will grant you that. He's been a great regular season quarterback. He's not played his best football when it matters most. We need a guy at QB. Stop with the Kroger brand QBs. That sounds good, Devin. I hear you. Where do you find that guy? And how do you find who's out there? You're not going to go, and there's no Mets. You can't do a Mets Stafford trade because of the money, okay? You can't go find some veteran quarterback who needs a new start. And it's where you're picking in the draft. There's not anybody that's going to fall to. There's no Lamar Jackson who's going to fall to you to make the difference. That's going to make the difference for this team next year because there is not tearing it down. The fan base is not going to accept a tear down and build back up. What do you do?
Well, here's the reality of it. They won't. You sit there and say they won't accept it. What choice do they have? It's not like they have their leverage is not to go. What we have seen consistently over however many years is that the NFL, and Jerry knows, they'll come. They will come and watch, and they will watch this team until the sun crashes into the moon.
You say that, but Jerry has never. The only time they've been bad is when they've had major injuries that have forced them to go 4-12. And so Jerry is never going to put a product out there at the start of the season that they rebuild. That's a total. He's never done that.
Would you not? Wait. You wouldn't call the Dave Campo era with.
No, that was not what they were trying to do. No, it's like going back. How about when they traded for Joey Galloway? Trade the first round pick with Joey Galloway because going back to when Aikman got hurt and Joey got hurt and all the other stuff. That's not the plan. Certainly at that point, I mean, I go back to those seasons. They thought we still have guys that we're going to win with. We still had Emmitt Smith was still on that team. They were not trying to tear that thing down.
No. I'm not talking about that period. I'm talking about when Troy retired and Joey got hurt and they drafted Quincy Carter and Jerry basically named him the starting quarterback.
At that point, because he had no quarterback and he was forced into that. I'm saying that Jerry, after that, which is why he likes finding quarterbacks on the cheap.
Speaking of, they do have a quarterback on the cheap. And we've got Rock. I can say his name. What a great
one
name.
of my friends.
What are they going to do with Trey Lance? No, hang on. This is a legitimate question. Jerry pulled the trigger on that Trey Lance trade right before the start of the regular season. When you and I both knew, we talked about it here. This guy's never even going to practice, right? He's never going to practice this fall. So now you've got a full training camp coming up. At this point, Dak Prescott really doesn't need to do a lot in the spring. He just doesn't. He probably doesn't even need, well, they've proven it. He doesn't need to do anything in training camp. So you've got this guy who was the 5th overall pick. You and I both know the odds are he probably can't play. But the Cowboys committed to at least look at him. What's stopping them from really looking at him?
They're going to look at him. He's going to get the offseason. But I'm going to tell you, I was telling somebody the other day. First of all, have you ever heard of a top 5 pick fail miserably and go somewhere else and become a franchise quarterback?
Okay, that's a good question. Hang on.
You could say and keep Baker Mayfield in your back pocket. But
Baker Mayfield, I would say Baker.
That's your buddy Baker because you dissed him and now he's back on top. But anyway, my thing about this is this. I remember when Patrick Mahomes was in Kansas City, he was not the starter. And
Alex Smith, right?
Yeah, Alex Smith was the starter. But everybody in the building was whispering about this guy in practice, killing him in practice. We've had a full year of Trey Lance experience in practice. The streets are quiet. The streets are quiet.
What would the third string quarterback reps wise get in a practice?
Well, he's doing all the scout team stuff. He's doing a lot. I mean, I'm just saying the streets are quiet. There's nobody saying, "Oh, this Trey Lance got some." We see the ball popping off his arm. We see that little. I mean, the streets are quiet. The streets are quiet. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, they made the trade because Jerry was throwing something up against the wall, and again they gave a 4th round pickup when nobody else was giving up that much for Trey Lance to the 49ers. And we've seen the guy play. I like the guy, great kid, but there's nothing that they've seen to say they're ready to replace Dak Prescott with him.
So Dak Prescott is your starting quarterback in 2024. Okay. The blame game for this disaster is as long as a CVS receipt. Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Tank Lawrence. I don't even think they played with linebackers on Sunday against Green Bay. Aaron Jones is still running. They were all terrible. And, the biggest Achilles of that defense was against the run, and specifically linebackers, really since Leighton Vander Esch suffered a season-ending and potentially career-ending injury. They were awful. Tony Pollard didn't do anything. The offensive line wasn't very good. I don't care what anybody says. You can throw up a bunch. Dak threw 400 yards, and they're terrible. I can't find. Hell, even Brandon Aubrey missed a kick.
The best player was Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson showed up. He had a great game. It's a damn shame he doesn't get credit for. He can't be proud of his game because of the loss. And the only reason I brought this up because it's easy. Everybody's going to go after the quarterback. Everybody's going to go after the head coach. But and Jack said it. If you're going to blame him, blame me. Well, there's a whole
Oh, the
A lot
list
of
is
people need to get in that cap, okay? Because a lot of people do a lot of talking, okay? CeeDee Lamb was not good. His mind was not. You watched him, he was not good in that game from the start. Okay, he dropped the pass, couldn't come up with some catches, things that you expect from the best player, the best receiver in football. His numbers look good at the end, just like Dax did, but he was not good. He was not
garbage.
His body language was bad. Defensively, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. They couldn't stop him running. They made a first-time quarterback look like he was Aaron Rodgers. They couldn't do anything. We talked about the defense coordinator who's getting looked at by he's interviewing with the Panthers, the Commanders, the
Seahawks,
Titans,
Falcons.
the Chargers. All these teams are interviewing him this week for jobs, and he's going to have an interview with Seattle. But his defense was exposed. He was exposed. He got a clown suit put on him by the Green Bay Packers coach. Their schemes. Guys were running wide open. The tight end caught a touchdown like it was a punt. He turned around, caught the ball.
And nobody was there.
And nobody was within 40 yards of him. Then he runs to the end zone. Okay. That makes no sense. That does not happen.
And all those guys, and I realize this is a different era.
And Michael Parsons, who didn't talk to the media after the game, then you did not hear from him. Again, I talked to Tank Lawrence before the game. I asked him, I said, Tank, what are y'all gonna do with Aaron Jones? He said, he got to come see me. I'm on the field too. He got to come see. The great soundbite, and people that went viral. When the cameras were off, I said, Tank, you was on the field the last 3 times y'all played him, and he gassed y'all for 100 yards a game and 6 touchdowns, okay? Seriously, I said that. He said, well, our defense is different. It wasn't different.
No, it wasn't different. It was worse. And now, okay,
it wasn't different. It was worse. It was the Cowboys gave up more points than any team in franchise history in the playoffs.
That's amazing. The team's been around for 1,000 years. All right. What do you do now? Seriously, what do you do now? And that's why I asked the question. We had the graphic that Candy built for us. But what I like this. What do we do now? I don't know. That's a really good question. The Mavericks are playing. They're pretty good. Rangers pitchers and catchers report here in about a month. And the Dallas Stars
TCU basketball. TCU
basketball is killing it. That's right. They beat back-to-back. They beat 2 top 10 teams back-to-back home games. It should have won a third one with Kansas. But, what do we – seriously, what will be the first domino to fall with the Cowboys at the Star?
Well, obviously the major domino, the thing they have to make a decision on is the coach. And we'll see. He's not going to talk to us until Wednesday or Thursday this week. And we'll see. Jerry has gone radio silent. I know they put out this disclaimer that Jerry's contractually not supposed to talk or to talk to on the flagship station when the season ends, but he's done it in the past.
I was going to say he's done it in the past.
And I'm going to tell you what happened. 2 years ago, he did it, and he left Mike McCarthy out to dry, okay? Yep. And he's, caused a firestorm. He would not commit to Mike McCarthy, and they caused a firestorm. I think that's when they decided we're going to end this because things are too raw and too real, and he may say something to get his coach in trouble again or cause a poor environment. And so he didn't do it last year. He's not doing it this year, but he's done it in the past. He's gone radio silent. So we're waiting to see when Jerry Jones services and talks again, whether that's, if he talks and makes a decision on Mike McCarthy. I'm sure it'll happen before then, but I'll be at the Senior Bowl in Mobile in a couple of weeks, and certainly we'll talk to him there and get something more from him there.
Okay, hang on, let me ask you a question. Clarence, is there, having covered the Senior Bowl before, I know it's changed, but used to be pretty informal. You could just go talk to guys. It was great. I'm sure it's more formal now. But Clarence, is there any chance if this thing gets to the Senior Bowl and Mike McCarthy is still the head coach that they would fire him after the Senior Bowl?
No, I think it'll be done before then. You can't wait that long. Again, my thing is you have to, the train is going down the track. Okay. There are too many coaches in the carousel.
Right.
And if there's somebody you want, you need to get on the train.
No, because you're right. Belichick's going to get a job. I know
Belichick has already interviewed with the Falcons and Harbaugh's interview with the Chargers. And you got these young coaches and out there that maybe some are still in the playoffs. But you have to get on the carousel if you're going to do this.
Is there any chance? You talked about old guys, Bill Belichick is Pro Football, Hall of Famer, won 1 billion games, 6 Super Bowls. But that record with and without Tom Brady is a big, big.
No doubt. But I know
he
one
has
thing.
told everybody, I can work with Jerry and Steven.
Yes.
His mentor did. Bill Parcells did. I'm of the mind that this is not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either, but I know one thing. His defense, as bad as they've been, and of course they gave up 38 points to the Cowboys this year, but his defense won't give away. That, it's funny. It's like I was going to say, his defense don't get played like that, but of course Dak threw 75 yards.
I mean,
Dak had his highest passing game against Bill.
Right.
But anyway.
All right. We've talked forever.
All I know is before we go, playoffs are for who are you rooting for? Who do we root for now?
That's a good question. I think one of the great stories, I think it's because of where they play, and coaching success stories and quarterback success stories and front office success stories that does not get the credit it deserves is Baltimore.
Right.
I think the fact that they went out on a limb and they drafted Lamar Jackson the same year Baker Mayfield went 1. The fact that John Harbaugh went out and said, let's go with this guy. And he's been great. And the only thing that's ever worried me about Lamar Jackson is that he runs a lot, and guys who run a lot get hurt. They get hit. And it gets harder. The older you get, they've all said it. Andrew Luck ran too much, and he got hit, and he had to retire. And the only knock on Lamar, for me, forever, is like he runs a lot, and those guys eventually, they pay a price. But the fact that Baltimore, whether it was Ozzie Newsome, and I was a big Ozzie Newsome guy, the way they've handled the coaching search, the fact that they stuck with Harbaugh, the fact that it was a special teams coach. You never see special. You always talk about who's the hot young guy. Right. They're only hot young offensive minds. Right. It's never the defensive guy, and it's certainly never the special teams coach. Well, they recognized that guy was really sharp, and they gave him the job. I really like Josh Allen. I'd like to see them do well. But the fact that Baltimore handled its business the way they've done it, and they've been consistently around it, they've been consistently good, the fact that they took a chance on Lamar Jackson and it's worked out the way that it has, I would say I'm kind of pulling for them. The other ones, Jordan Love's kind of an easy guy to root for. My daughter's a big Taylor Swift fan, so I guess we're Chiefs fans. And I don't know. It's, my heart's kind of broken because the Bengals, they're out of it because Joe Burrow broke his knee.
I'm with you on Lamar Jackson at AFC and Baltimore. I'd like to see them. At the NFC, I'm rooting for the Fighting Dan Campbells.
Oh, yeah. Go Glen Rose, Texas. Absolutely. I'm a little surprised you said that. He's an Aggie.
And Baltimore.
That's a good one. Yep. Eminem. Hey, but remember, pop stars or musicians or hip-hop guys on the sideline watching games, that's a total distraction, and it's bad for the NFL.
Yeah, I would love to see.
Oh, that's a good one. Dan Campbell in Detroit's a good one. Yeah, I missed that one. That's
the Fighting Dan Campbell. I'd love to see it. Well, we'll learn more this weekend and see where we are next week.
We talked forever. Thank you, Window Nation. Thank you, Clarence. Thank you, Kenny. We'll see you next week here on Cowboys Overtime. For all of your Cowboys needs, make sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. See you next week.